Dawn, May 1941. North Atlantic swells slam a convoy strung out like a necklace across gray water. In a hut in Buckinghamshire, miles from any ocean, a young woman in a cardigan leans over a strip of paper and whispers, "I think we've got them." A machine taller than a man begins to turn. Clack, 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 while pencils hover like held breaths. Somewhere out at sea, a U-boat captain sends a routine weather report. He doesn't know his words just walked through the front door of Bletchley Park. Bletchley Park did not look like a weapon. It looked like a country house that had learned to keep secrets, lawns, a lake, and a jumble of huts that smelled of damp wood, tea, and hot machine oil. Inside worked thousands: linguists, mathematicians, chess players, typists, postal clerks, debutantes with perfect memory, and people who could make a kettle boil exactly when bad news softened. Their enemy was a device the Germans believed was unbreakable: the Enigma cipher, a typewriter married to electricity and arrogance. The story actually begins before Britain even thought to ask for help. In Poland, 1932, three mathematicians, Marian Rejewski, Jerzy Rojicki, and Henryk Zagalski, took Enigma apart not with screwdrivers but with algebra. They exploited operator habits and catalog errors to rebuild the wiring in their heads. They designed tools, Zagalski sheets that could filter possibilities, and the Bomba, a machine that searched for the day's key like a safecracker who hears mathematics. When Germany prepared to swallow Poland in 1939, the Polish Cipher Bureau did something world-changing. They shared everything with the French and the British. A meeting at Pyry near Warsaw and later in Brennan turned national genius into Allied inheritance. Without that handover, Bletchley Park would have been a question without a pencil. When the war began, Britain repurposed a Victorian mansion into a factory for insight. Hut 6 attacked Army and Air Force Enigma. Hut 8 wrestled with the German Navy, the hardest target because naval operators used stricter procedures and additional security. Alan Turing, a quiet storm with a stammer and a mind like tempered glass, designed an electromechanical machine called the bomb to search through rotor settings at inhuman speed. Gordon Welchman added the diagonal board, an insight that multiplied the machine's power by letting patterns cancel huge regions of search space. Dilly Knox, a classic scholar with the heart of a safecracker, led breakthroughs against certain Abwehr variants. Joan Clark, precise and stubborn, became Turing's partner in Hut 8's hardest puzzles. The huts were full of names the official histories took too long to say: Mavis Beatty, Bill Tutt, Hugh Alexander, Jack Good, Max Newman, Tommy Flowers, and so many who signed the Secrets Act and then signed their letters home with weather and nothing else. Where did the messages come from? From a spiderweb called the Y Service, listening stations across Britain and beyond, operators wearing headphones for hours, catching Morse bursts from Atlantic murk, desert skies, and night clouds over occupied Europe. They wrote 5-letter groups on pads and sent the traffic to Bletchley by motorcycle, teleprinter, or pigeon if the weather had opinions. The work was relentless arithmetic. 1 million characters a day on peak weeks, each one a bead you could click along a wire if you had the right rhythm. Enigma's strength was combinatorial explosion. 3, later 4, rotors chosen from a set, rotor starting positions, ring settings, plug board swaps, astronomical possibilities. Its weakness was people. Operators reused phrases. Harried radio men ended weather with "wetter Vorhersage," used names as cribs, or repeated a message when asked, creating a depth that mathematicians could exploit. Bletchley's art was turning human sloppiness into mechanical certainty. The bomb rooms looked like abstract cathedrals, columns of rotating drums, wires looping like rosaries, the music of relays clacking in contrapuntal rows. Wrens, Women's Royal Naval Service, ran the machines with grace that could have been a ballet if the stakes were not convoys and lives. A run might take minutes or hours. When it stopped, a candidate key landed on a clipboard. Then came Banburismus, Turing's paper and pencil method of scoring possibilities for naval Enigma, and menus that were as much art as instruction. Verification mattered. A false stop could mislead destroyers into empty ocean and leave merchants to meet steel teeth alone. because the Kriegsmarine was careful, Bletchley needed luck that looked like courage. In May 1941, Royal Navy sailors boarded the damaged U-110 in the North Atlantic and pulled out current code books and an Enigma before she sank. In October 1942 in the Mediterranean, men from HMS Petard, including Tony Fasson, Colin Grazier, and Tommy Brown, swam to the sinking U-559 and hauled out wet code books and weather keys under a deadline set by physics. Fasson and Grazier were lost when the U-boat went down. Brown survived to hand over the soggy treasure. Bletchley dried the pages like rare leaves. Those captures, combined with fresh bomb designs, reopened the naval Enigma, just as U-boats were stalking Allied convoys in deadly packs. The effect on the Battle of the Atlantic was math you could taste. With Ultra, the name given to intelligence from high-grade decodes, Allied commanders could reroute convoys around wolf packs like a chess player seeing 3 moves ahead. They could steer hunter-killer groups to ambushes that felt like clairvoyance. Losses fell as 1943 turned its calendar. Sinkings did not cease, but the ratio inverted. On land, Ultra pointed Montgomery toward weak seams at El Alamein and warned convoys to Malta when the air grew too thick to breathe. In the air, it helped time countermeasures against raids and guided night fighter tactics. Not every victory was Ultra's, but Ultra's fingerprint smudged a lot of maps. Bletchley's work didn't stop at Enigma. German High Command used a separate, even more complex machine cipher the British called Tunny, the Lorenz SZ machines. When a German operator in 1941 resent a long message with the same key settings and only light rephrasing, an unthinkable lapse, Bill Tutt reverse-engineered the entire system from pure traffic analysis. Max Newman organized a mechanized attack on Tunny, and Tommy Flowers, a post office engineer with nerves of copper, built Colossus, the world's first large-scale electronic programmable computer. Colossus didn't break Enigma. It shredded Tunny, accelerating decrypts that revealed strategic intentions between Berlin and field marshals. In a park that began with pencils, the future arrived in racks of glowing valves. The labor was human before it was heroic, shifts that bled into one another. Teacups with lipstick marks arranged around rotor stacks. A pianist in Hut 8 who played during breaks on a battered upright to make numbers feel like they had shapes. Bicycles lined up outside like patient horses. Secrecy tighter than breath. You told your flatmate you did clerical work. You told your mother you filed weather. Post-war, many carried silence longer than medals. Let's watch a decode day quietly. 6:10. Y stations push a clutch of night traffic from the Bay of Biscay. Weather patterns and U-boat reports smell of rotor set B. A wren tags the packets for Hut 8, 0730. In the bomb room, a fresh menu based on a suspected crib, wetter, is wired. Drums start spinning. Someone coughs politely into a handkerchief that knows too much. 0905, stop. A candidate tumbles out. A checker in a side office applies plugs, spins simulated rotors, and watches plain text trickle across the page like a photograph developing. It reads like a weather telegram. The Deutsch is boring, thus perfect. 10 hours. The key of the day unlocks more traffic. A U-boat group's patrol line shifts 50 miles northwest. A convoy is at risk if it keeps its current course. 10:30. The naval section routes a warning through Western Approaches Command. A desk in Liverpool moves pins. A message goes out that sounds like ordinary seamanship and is in fact time travel. Night. An escort group finds the ocean empty where wolves were and cluttered where wolves are going. Somewhere, a captain drinks tea that tastes inexplicably better. Bletchley's security discipline was as impressive as its combinatorics. Need to know fenced insights inside compartments. The phrase ultra was itself handled like an explosive. Only those who needed it read it, and often only the gist was relayed so that no single action would reveal the source. Commanders were instructed to find cover stories. Pretend reconnaissance found the target. Cite DF, direction finding. Claim a prisoner talked in his sleep. It is an odd morality of war. Tell small lies to protect the big truth that is saving lives by the thousand. The ethics were not abstract. The U-559 salvage cost 2 men their lives. Bletchley's staff later handled the codebooks with care that felt like a promise. There were choices sharper than rote. Act on a decrypt and you might save a convoy but reveal that you are reading the mail. Wait and you might keep the secret at the cost of sailors. Those balances were judged in rooms without windows by people who then bicycled home in blackout and slept badly. Historians still debate particular calls. What stands is the intent: shorten the war, lower the sum of grief. Because this is a YouTube story and not a museum guide, we will put the names we should have learned in school in one breath. Turing, who wrote the math that became a field and the memo that became a machine. Welchman, who saw diagonals where others saw a wall. Knox, who cared about fragments until they sang. Clark, who did leadership in a sweater and changed the curve of a sea war. Beatty, who cracked Italian naval messages that helped sink a fleet. Totti, who taught that you can reverse engineer arrogance. Flowers, who built an idea out of valves and will. Rejewski, Rozhitsky, Zygalski, who lit the first candle and passed it on. Add hundreds more whose names were printed only on ration cards. The end was quiet. In 1945, Germany folded in on itself. The Huts prepared to keep their promise: burn what needed burning, ship what needed shipping, and say nothing. Colossi were dismantled. Bombs were junked or hidden. Some machines went to other quiet rooms for Cold War chores. Veterans went back to ordinary jobs and extraordinary silence. Decades later, the Official Secrets Act loosened its grip. The story walked out into daylight blinking like an owl. Bletchley Park became a museum where school children press buttons and listen to relays, chat about a time when the loudest thing in the world was a secret. What did Bletchley actually do to the war's length? Estimates vary, but many historians argue Ultra shortened the war in Europe by months. Perhaps 2 years when you aggregate convoy survival, battlefield positioning, and the accelerated collapse of enemy logistics and morale. The number is less important than the shape. The graph of losses bends downward. The graph of confidence bends upward. That is what math looks like when it grows a face. 3 lessons travel well beyond the 1940s. First, details decide disbelief. The enemy trusted Enigma because the math was strong. Bletchley won because it attacked the procedures, habits, and small errors that real humans commit. Security is culture, not just ciphers. Second, diversity is a force multiplier. Mathematicians, linguists, engineers, classicists, radio ops, typists. Interdisciplinary teams made progress no single genius could. The next impossible problem you face will likely need the same recipe. Third, build tools that make more tools. The bomb enabled decodes. Colossus enabled speed. Both unlocked new questions to ask faster. Good tools don't just solve problems. They raise the ceiling on what counts as solvable. Keep 3 scenes for your pocket. A wren leaning her ear near a bomb to hear a fault before it speaks in smoke. A Y station operator, pencil flicking as dots and dashes thread through static like sewing in the dark. A bike on a gravel path at dawn, its bells silent. Its basket full of yesterday's secrets riding toward a desk that will turn them into tomorrow's safety. When you leave Bletchley's story, resist making it only about a genius or a machine. It is about craft under pressure, decency under secrecy, and the choice to build a place where thousands of ordinary days add up to a break in a storm.